to have Congressman Raskin, who really represents the best of that. I know so many of us saw him on the January 6th hearing, standing up for our democracy on that tragic day, and his continued leadership, just going all across the country and speaking to groups like ours to show that there is still fight in our Democratic Party, and that there is still a brighter future ahead, and that Donald Trump and the Republican MAGA assault on our democracy and on our country is not inevitable and it's not unstoppable. And I want to give a special shout out to Congressman Raskin as well for his Democracy Summer Program, which funds next generation Democratic leaders, high school and college students, to do on the ground organizing in states all across the country, including right here in North Dakota. So I think, we all of us on this call probably have seen Congressman Raskin on TV. And I had the pleasure of shaking his hand and getting a photo at the DNC convention in Chicago. And I'm just so delighted that he's here to join us. I'm very well aware you're not here to hear me talk. You're here to hear Congressman Raskin. So I will stop and kick it over to my colleague and mentor, the chair of the Oklahoma Democrats, Alicia Andrews. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chair Goldwyn. Welcome, Democrats from Oklahoma and North Dakota, and particularly welcome to Congressman Raskin. And happy Taco Tuesday. We're at a time, right, where in Oklahoma and North Dakota, our representation, or the people who are elected to represent us, are refusing to meet with us. They're refusing to represent us. And I'm so grateful that we have fighters like Congressman Jamie Raskin, who will stand up to the Republicans and stand up for us. We've all been watching him fight, and we've all been benefactors of Democracy Summer. And we've been watching him fight for us, and for him to give up his time to share with us, we are incredibly grateful. And I know just as well as Chair Goldwyn, you didn't come here to hear me. You did come here to hear Congressman Raskin. And so without further ado, I would like you to join me in welcoming Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Chair Andrews, Chair Goldwyn, all you that's in Oklahoma and North Dakota, what a great honor and privilege it is for me to get to spend some time with you this evening. And look, I know it's a lot harder to be a passionate true blue Democrat in North Dakota or in Oklahoma than it is in Maryland. I have the great privilege of representing the people of Maryland's beautiful 8th district, but we're a blue state, and I've got a blue district. And to be a strong Democrat, as you guys are in Oklahoma or North Dakota, you got to know why you're a Democrat. I mean, our Democratic Party in Maryland is so strong. We got Republicans becoming Democrats to try to get elected to office, but you guys are upholding and brandishing the flag of democracy and freedom in your states. And we are profoundly and eternally grateful to you for what you are doing. And we want you to keep fighting, and we want you to keep winning. And we're winning every day now. We're winning every day in court. We now have 179 preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness and terror unleashed against the country. But the people are moving to us in very big ways. You could see it in that Wisconsin State Supreme Court election. You could see it even in those 2 Florida House races, which we lost, but where Democrats outperformed history by 12 or 13 points. And if you extrapolate that to the rest of the country, we would win like 60 or 70 new seats if we could actually keep that up at 12 or 13 points. But we're winning state Senate, state House races all over the country in districts that Republicans have been dominating for decades. So no good act is wasted in this business, you guys. And I want to sincerely thank you and extend our appreciation to you for what you're doing. And I know you're up against a wall of gerrymandered districts. And, once the GOP seizes control of the state legislature, they keep gerrymandering themselves in on a decennial basis. And then they gerrymander the U.S. House districts as well. But it wasn't long ago that we had U.S. senators who were Democrats from North Dakota. And it was not long ago at all that we had my friend Kendra Horn as a representative in the U.S. House from Oklahoma. So please keep fighting and keep things moving ahead. Meantime, we're dealing with absolute derangement and chaos in the government. I went to the the big joint session State of the Union where Donald Trump was. We each got to bring one guest. So I brought a constituent of mine whose name is Dr. Lauren McGee. She was head of the pediatric cancer unit at NIH, and both a practicing doctor and a biologist. So I took her uh, to the joint session because she was fired on February 14th in a mass sacking of federal workers. Happy Valentine's Day from Doge and Elon Musk. But anyway, I wanted people to meet her and hear about the great progress they were making on child cancer and show the pictures of the kids whose lives were saved by the work they were doing until Elon Musk and his band of night riding computer hacker warriors got involved and just decided to start firing anybody who was in a probationary category. Now, Dr. McGee was on probation, not because she knocked over a bank or a liquor store. She was on probation because she'd had nothing but superior evaluations, and she was promoted to be head of the whole unit. And Musk took that as an opportunity to fire thousands of probationary employees. But anyway, we're at the session, and Donald Trump starts off by saying that it's going to be his key priority to wipe out childhood cancer in America, which was just mortifying to hear him say that while I'm with the woman who I'm sure he never heard of and didn't know anything about, who got fired by Doge, who actually was making progress on it. And I asked her if she wanted to go, but she wanted to stay. So then Trump launches into a disquisition on all of the great savings that Elon Musk is making for us. And Musk is in the crowd. And, of course, they saved us nothing. Their first act was to fire 18 inspectors general, whose real job it is, with hundreds and hundreds of employees, to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. And these people are forensic auditors and economists and investigators. They're not a bunch of data thieves, which is all that Elon Musk brought in to try to steal everybody's data and then fire, FAA air traffic controllers and cancer specialists and food and drug inspectors at the Department of Agriculture and Forest Service firefighters and so on. But anyway, Trump is going down this list of everybody, of all these great savings. And it's all like $2 million here, $1 million there. But he says, and then we saved $8.5 million at NIH because they were wasting it on creating transgender mice. And that didn't sound that good to me, and I texted my friend. I said, transgender mice, why are you guys spending $8.5 million on transgender mice? Maybe there's something to this Doge thing after all. No, she says, this was debunked 2 weeks ago, and she sends me this article about how $8.5 million was budgeted for the creation of transgenic mice. That is, mice that have been injected with DNA for the purposes of doing scientific experimentation on asthma and HIV/AIDS and breast cancer and leukemia and malignant narcissistic personality disorder and all of the lethal pathologies of our time. We're being governed by morons here. Somebody must have known that that was a lie, but they decided to put it anyway. And the Republicans were all hooping and hollering about how, NIH was spending $8.5 million to create transgender mice. And at that point, I said to my friend, let's go now. She wanted to stay. It was one of these interminable, like Fidel Castro length speeches by Donald Trump. It was like 5 hours. Finally, we get out of there and we go outside and there's a big car crash. Well, it turns out that Speaker Mike Johnson's chief of staff had been drinking throughout the entire speech. You can't blame him for that, but he didn't have to get in his car, start driving, gets in his car, and he plows into the back of a parked police cruiser. So all the police descend on the car. They struggle to get the door open. He staggers out. They arrest him. He does a breathalyzer. It's like through the roof. Mike Johnson immediately issues a statement saying that he will not be fired. They're going to stand by him. He's a good man. He's been a good, loyal Republican soldier. And there are a couple reporters there. There's a Fox News reporter. There's an NPR reporter. They come over to me and they said, so what do you think about this? And I said, you know what? I think it goes to show that there are way too many DUI hires in the Republican Party today, starting with Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and going all the way down. But anyway, like, this is the chaos that we've been thrust into. People ask me, are we in a constitutional crisis? Well, there's no objective, neutral definition of a constitutional crisis. It certainly feels like one. But I will tell you this, the Constitution is definitely under attack in every conceivable way. Starting with Article 1, which says that all legislative power is vested in the Congress of the United States. We've got the lawmaking power. We've got the power to create budgets and raise taxes and raise armies and navies. We've got the power to declare war, not the president. If anybody's going to declare war on Venezuela, it's the Congress. It's not the president who's going to do it. We've got the power to regulate commerce domestically and internationally. If anybody's going to impose tariffs, it's Congress, which has always imposed tariffs. And when Trump, started his stupid trade war against the whole world except for Russia and Vladimir Putin, he invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, which has never been used for tariffs before and doesn't mention the word tariffs, which is why he got struck down in court last week by the International Court of Trade, which knows those statutes very well, and said he was simply acting ultra vires. It was outside of his power. It's up to Congress to decide that. So we are beating them in court every single day. 179 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders. It's amazing what's going on, but the courts are having a hard time keeping up. We're having a hard time keeping up with all of the lawlessness that's out there. But we've got to vindicate the powers of Congress, which is difficult since the Republicans have this very slender majority, but they don't want to stand up for the powers of Congress and stand up for the statute. So it's my job as the head Democrat on the Judiciary Committee to be filing briefs, and we've filed more than a dozen briefs, and we've won in every single case that we've heard back from so far. I just want people to know that right now, the most important thing we can be doing is to shore up judicial independence. We're making sure that the courts are safe, they're secure, they're not afraid of the torrent of violent threats and death threats that all of us get in Congress that have moved also to the courts at this point. So the president has got to get back in his lane, so to speak, right? What's the job of the president? Because sometimes my colleagues are very confused about it. Even the Democrats will get up and say, well, we're three co-equal branches. And I always have to get up and say, I really beg to differ. First of all, co-equal is not even a word, all right? That's like extremely unique or something like that, all right? We're not three co-equal branches. If we were co-equal, why is, first of all, Congress in Article 1, why does Congress have the power to impeach and try and convict the president, and the president doesn't have the power to impeach and try and convict us? Think about that for a second, right? Article 2, compared to Article 1, is like this big. The key passage says that a president shall be impeached for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. What's the job of the president? I mean, after commander-in-chief, and by the way, not commander-in-chief of the nation or commander-in-chief of the government or even commander-in-chief of the armed forces, commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy in times of actual conflict, okay? So what's the president's main job after that? To take care that the laws are faithfully executed, not thwarted, not distorted, not mangled. The federal statutes that we pass that are appropriations laws, those must be obeyed. A federal appropriations act is a federal law, just like a law saying you can't violently attack federal officers. It's the same thing. It's not a budgetary negotiation. So the president, what we say to him is, do your job. Take care that the laws are faithfully executed. They've created so much confusion and constitutional illiteracy and chaos. People think that Congress has got to follow the president. It's the president's job to enforce the laws that we in Congress pass, and it is the job of the courts in Article 3 to define what the law is. As the court put it in Marbury v. Madison, 1803, it's emphatically the province and the duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. So We've got to hold them to that. We've got to use the criminal contempt power, the civil contempt power, the whole coercive apparatus of the courts to make sure that the executive branch is complying with their court orders, which are being handed down by both Democratic appointee judges and Republican appointee judges. The judge in the Abrejo Garcia case, Judge Boasberg, is a Republican appointee, a Bush appointee, who was Justice Kavanaugh's roommate at Yale Law School, like a pillar of the conservative legal establishment. But he's a stickler for the rule of law, and he has said he will use every coercive power that the courts have to see to it that they get Garcia returned to America, and that due process is afforded to everybody. People say to me, well, do you really want due process for guilty people? That's the whole point of due process. You don't know who's guilty until you've had due process. That's how we separate the guilty people from the innocent people. So yes, due process is afforded to everybody, and it means different things in different contexts, in the criminal context, in the immigration context for federal workers who are being fired. So it adjusts to the particular circumstances, but those are the most two beautiful words in the English language, due process, because that's what separates the rights and freedoms of the people from arbitrary state power and people just being swept up off of the street and sent to a torturer's prison or dungeon in El Salvador. So the Bill of Rights is under attack. You know, the freedom of speech is under attack. People are being sent out of the country, deported because they went to a rally or they wrote an op-ed in the school newspaper. You know, there are the media entities like Associated Press, which is being punished by the White House because they dare to call the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico. And they're using the FCC and other entities to try to coerce newspapers and magazines to do the will of the president. And he keeps suing them. So they have to settle with him because then he uses the FCC to come down on them like a ton of bricks. The separation of church and state is under attack. A couple weeks ago, one of my colleagues got up in the House. He says, well, he says the moral downfall of America was in 1962 in Engel versus Vitale when the Supreme Court banned prayer in the public schools. And so I got up, I said, no, the Supreme Court never banned prayer in the public schools. As long as there are pop math quizzes, there will be prayer in the public schools. Anybody can pray whenever he or she wants to pray. It's just that the government can't write a religious script and then compel your children to participate in it. But it never ends. You saw Texas and Louisiana, they just voted to endorse the 10 Commandments and to post them in all the classrooms in the state. And so I knew it was going to happen. My MAGA colleagues show up that Monday. They say, we want to endorse the 10 Commandments. We want to post the 10 Commandments. And I said, gee, the 10 Commandments have been doing fine for millennia without an endorsement by the U.S. House of Representatives or by the Freedom Caucus. No, they insist. One guy tells me, he says, the 10 Commandments are the basis for the Bill of Rights, right? I'm like, well, I know there's 10 in each one, but like, let's test that proposition. The first commandment says, thou shalt have no other God before me. The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. How does the First Commandment dictate the First Amendment? But no, they insist they want an up or down vote on the 10 Commandments. I go to the Rules Committee. I say, I've got a different idea for how we can structure this. You should have to vote on each commandment separately. And you can't vote for any commandment you yourself have ever violated, okay? Because then you'll be taking the name of the Lord in vain in violation of the third commandment. I see the North Dakota legislature just defeated a 10 Commandments bill. Good for them. Anyway, this is what we're up against. Violations of, you name it, the ban on cruel and unusual punishment, due process, the emoluments clause as Donald Trump pockets a $400 million airplane from the theocratic dictator of the government of Qatar, which he shook them down for. Blatant violation of the Emoluments Clause, which forbids anybody in federal office from collecting a present, an emolument, an office or title of any kind, whatever, from a king, prince, or foreign state. Now he's saying, well, we're going to make Pete Hegseth take it. Guess what? Pete Hegseth can't take it. without the consent of Congress. Donald Trump can't take it without the consent of Congress. You got to come to Congress. Abraham Lincoln in 1862 brought these two beautiful elephant tusks given to him by the king of Siam to ask whether he could keep them. And Congress said no. Congress said, no, we love you, Honest Abe. You're doing a great job in the Civil War. Turn those over to the Department of Interior. Only Donald Trump thinks he can be the only president in American history who just pockets all of this money from foreign states all over the world. And of course, he's opened up new vistas in crypto capitalism as he's completely deregulated crypto. They've dropped 13 different cases by the Securities and Exchange Commission against accused crypto fraudsters. He dropped them against Justin Sun, who's a guy who invested $75 million, I think it was, in the Trump family's new crypto venture, World Liberty Financial. Anyway, the corruption is unbelievable. It's just spectacular. It's beyond belief. Nobody's ever seen anything like it in American history. So there we are. The good news is we're hanging tough in court. We're going to take back the Congress next year. We have people standing up all over the country, not just in the blue states, but in the red states and red communities. I hear from veterans and Republicans every day who are telling me, I can't take it anymore. I'm coming over to the side of democracy and freedom and civilization. And so we are growing, and we've got to keep growing and keep organizing people. Thank you for mentioning Democracy Summer. This is the program we've got for high school and college kids across the country. There are kids who are apprentices to come and participate. We've had thousands of kids do it. We're now in most of the country. We'd love to have both Oklahoma and North Dakota involved. And then we get great lectures by Tim Snyder, Nancy Pelosi, Benny Thompson, AOC, Lawrence Tribe, you name it. They come and we do lectures in the morning, and then the kids are out knocking on doors and canvassing and doing digital organizing and spreading the bright arts of politics in the 21st century against all of the dark arts of disinformation and propaganda. All right, anyway, I've gone on too long. I'm going to leave you guys with the words of, let's say, the great democracy patriot, Tom Paine. That's who my son Tommy was named after. And Tom Paine got over here in 1774, 2 years before the American Revolution, and he fell in love with the promise of our country. He said, if this land lives up to its ideals, it will become, he said, an asylum to humanity. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but a place of refuge for people fleeing political and religious oppression all over the world. And then he wrote Common Sense, the pamphlet that ignited the American Revolution. And George Washington had the troops at Valley Forge reading it aloud by campfire light in the freezing darkness during the Revolutionary War. But anyway, Paine, he wanted to write a pamphlet in 1776. It was a tough year to keep people's spirits up, to keep people's courage up, to embolden people. The country was split right down the middle. Half of the people running around saying, you can't beat the greatest military empire that's ever existed. And for all of human history, people have lived under people like Vladimir Putin and King George and Donald Trump. That's been the fate of humanity. But half of the people are saying, no, let's give it a try. And even with all of the problems and the imperfections and the sin, the original sin of slavery that existed, still the people thought they could choose another path that would lead to a more perfect union, that would lead to greater democracy and freedom. So anyway, Paine wrote this pamphlet. I just want to quote a little passage for you. I'm going to update the language so it doesn't offend modern sensibilities. Nancy Pelosi told me I had to do that. She said Tom Paine was a feminist and he wouldn't care. But he wrote these words in this beautiful pamphlet called The Crisis, the American Crisis. And he said, these are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone that stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Let's make that victory ours you great Oklahoma and North Dakota Democrats. Hang tough, everybody.